Hello, denizens of the internet. Wonderful to have you join me. I am a child of the 60s. A seismic societal shift began back then that we are, some might say, suffering through now. But it was the recent death of Tommy Smothers, one half of the famous Smother Brothers comedy duo, that got me thinking that all these claims of societal justice we're going through now, is it really the equivalent of the huge societal earthquakes and conflicts of the 60s? Or are we just being pussies now? I want to take a look at entertainment through the lens of the Smother Brothers. Did you notice I used the word lens? It's a common academic word for all programs ending in studies. It means you can study this and get a credit at Oberlin College. Warning, if you are taking a college or university program ending in studies, it's as useless as taking supplements. As someone who was there, I think I can recognize what the young people today feel, or more accurately, have been manipulated to feel. A longing for something similar to fight for. The 60s is seen as a romantic era, much like Camelot, but without the Crusades, which were so Islamophobic, but we're getting sold 60s light. Because most of those battles have been won, though not if you're watching woke TV like Doctor Who, Star Trek Discovery, and any number of Disney disasters. Will there be a Disney Plus show about the recently dumped Dr. Claudine Gay as president of Harvard, which unsurprisingly has cleaved along tribal fissures, as to whether you believe it was a white right-wing conspiracy to out her, or just the facts, ma'am? And the shouts of racism can be heard everywhere. But here's the thing, if we're comparing the 60s to the present, most are struggling to find the racism and sexism in Dr. Gay's removal. At the congressional hearings about anti-Semitism on campus, 3 of the most prestigious school presidents at that session were women. Even though their responses were shockingly tone-deaf, that's progress, isn't it? Dr. Gay is a black woman. Back in the 60s, what were the chances of a black woman being president of Harvard, or anyone of color for that matter? This is what I find so funny about the people screaming about her forced exit. Even if you believe white supremacists engineered her ouster in 2024, in the time of the Smother Brothers' first show in 1967, approximately 50 black freshman students were enrolled into Harvard. After Martin Luther King's assassination in 1968, there was an attempt to fix the disparity, and it went up to a staggering 100. None of those students would have been candidates for Harvard president in 67 or even decades later, but Dr. Gay was. Are you telling me that wasn't progress? I get it. You're mad. And speaking of microaggressions, there is talk of removing Trump's star from the Walk of Fame. This is a perfect example of how tiny our problems are as compared to the 60s. What a big deal we are making of them, and why it is so important to get these microaggressions into our entertainment. But seriously, I don't need to see your psychological creative breakdown on display in TV shows happening right in front of me. Get some therapy. Your problems are not interesting. How 0.06% of the population of North America has suddenly taken up so much of our bandwidth, I have no idea. Yeah, I feel like what's happening out in social media and in entertainment is just a bad sequel of the 60s. And the historically illiterate are either too stupid or self-indulgent to not recognize that diversity, equality, and inclusion are actually here. And I emphasize equality, not equity, folks. But if you're in the DEI consulting business, the job is never done and never will be, or you'd be out of a job. I can't say entertainment is now overrepresented by minorities and women, but I was shocked that Oppenheimer did not race and gender swap all those German and Hungarian scientists. What about the modern audience, people? Still, when I watch TV commercials, all I can think is, damn, those black people have it way better than me. They all live in bigger houses, drive better cars, have perfect lawns, and beautiful children who all seem to be enrolled in the finest schools for STEM. So, what the hell are the DEI activists complaining about? Notwithstanding this utopia, it's this drive to portray everything as being worse now that I think we're seeing in some movies, but mostly TV. There are Star Trek nutjobs who are absolutely convinced that the never-ending angsty dialogue in Discovery is just as woke as that of OG Trek. Sure, we got the odd preachy speech from Kirk, but OG Trek was mostly sci-fi allegory. There was the on-purpose diversity of Spock, Sulu, and Uhura, and you could also throw in Chekhov, because in the Cold War era of OG Trek, that was a very controversial bit of casting, showing that we were allied with the Russians in the future. Who'd have thought? But no one was moaning about race or ethnicity because those problems were solved. It was the aliens who suffered Earth's social maladies that the writers used to make their points. On the other hand, Discovery behaves as if present-day issues still exist in the future on board the USS Daycare, and they just can't stop fucking talking about it. And besides, Disco was not a very hopeful show. That is what happens when Starfleet adopts DEI. No more hope. But I'm jumping ahead of myself. I loved the Smother Brothers show. A simple, goofy variety program that CBS put up against NBC's big gun, Bonanza. Much to CBS's surprise, this bit of counterculture programming was a huge hit with people who hated the stodgy morality of Bonanza. And so CBS unwittingly dropped this counterculture stealth bomb on America, and CBS's affiliates, especially in the South, hated the show that was making fun of the Vietnam War, religion, California Governor Ronald Reagan, and especially Lyndon Johnson. The thing that strikes me today is just how much talk there is of social change. The 60s were a terrible time for racism, lack of female empowerment, and a youth that didn't feel they had a voice. But things have fundamentally changed, and anyone who claims otherwise is a liar. Now we have grifters telling us we need to be anti-racist or anti-racist. I don't get it. We have a wheel of privilege and power to make successful people who worked hard feel bad. We have diversity, equity, and inclusivity programs dedicated not so much to eradicating the scourge of the lack of diversity, equity, and inclusivity, but to have it go on forever. It's the woke version of original sin. Only through social justice baptism will it sanctify grace, lost through the sin of capitalism. Yes, the Smother Brothers were dealing with real issues, not multicolored crosswalks that stain your shoes. Entertainment of the time reflected the changes that, well, I guess needed to be made. It was clear-cut, so the entertainment was clear-cut. Was there opposition to it from society's gatekeepers? Absolutely. It was a big fight. But a lot of amazing movies that challenged these social norms were forged back then, not the least of which were Easy Rider, Blow Up, Midnight Cowboy, Bonnie and Clyde, If, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Are we getting challenging movies of similar caliber now that document the grave issues occupying us today, such as misgendering, cultural appropriation of hairstyles, or letting Jordan Peterson speak on campus? No, not even close, because the topics we need to document go against our modern day gatekeepers. Yes, ironically, things have flipped. The left are now the new Puritans, as Andrew Doyle wrote, and with the weapons of social media at their disposal, I would suggest that they are 1,000 times worse than the fuddy-duddy conservatives of the 60s, notwithstanding Kent State. But the conservatives back then were scared. They had no idea what was going on and had no idea how to deal with it. The woke today know exactly what they are doing and will do everything in their power to dox you, to cancel pig everything that challenges their orthodoxy. No, things are not as bad as in the 60s, but our entertainment sure is worse. We'll miss you, Tommy. Till next time, denizens, be seeing you.